The city is working with the Hyams Foundation to continue its series of dialogues on race. Since the opening dialogue last fall, there have been new reminders about the city's racial divide. The goal of the dialogues is to make way for healing, but also to help all people in Boston work together when faced with stressful events. That also describes the job of our guest, the city's Chief Resilience Officer, Dr. Atyia Martin. Thank you very much for being with us, Atyia.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Now, people think this is about recent events, but actually this whole project goes back at least a few years after Mayor Walsh took office.
This is correct. In fact, it became part of the mayor's platform while he was campaigning during an exchange that he had with a woman whose name has been published in the newspapers. There was a question asked about race relations in Boston, and the mayor was uncomfortable with his response. And as he looked deeper into the issues, came to the recognition that it was an issue that we needed to focus on as a city, and as part of his platform, he made it a priority. So when he took office, this idea of bringing folks together to really dig deeper into issues of racism and really figure out what we're going to do about it, not just talking about it, became a priority, and that's where I come in. So when the city applied for 100 Resilient Cities, which was started by the Rockefeller Foundation, the framing of the application really was about racial equity, social justice, and how resilience is related to those issues. And that once we receive the grant, our framing has been that in order for us to have citywide resilience, we have to embed racial equity, social justice, and social connections, social cohesion into all aspects of resilience. So whether we're talking about infrastructure, whether we're talking about the economy, whether we're talking about the environment, whether we're talking about social issues, that we're always having racial equity, social justice, and building better relationships as part of the framing and the foundation of how we're looking at issues. And these dialogues are really a way for us to not just build relationships, but bring folks together to dig deeper into these very difficult topics. A lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about these issues, mainly because there's a history of us having very unproductive conversations. And so this is really about reframing the way that we talk about racism. It's about us getting on the same page, listening to each other better, communicating better, so that we can get to better solutions around how we address these issues and the way it's been embedded into our culture as a society for the city of Boston and for our country. And so I am very honored to be serving under Mayor Walsh in this role because of his leadership, his very bold leadership. He likes to be humble, but I consider the leadership bold, and it's an opportunity for us to also show other cities that this can be done in this very comprehensive way. And so we're also partnering with Hyams Foundation to lead these dialogues, as well as at the neighborhood level, as well as the work around how do we work with the private sector and other organizations to also take responsibility for this work, because we recognize that this really is a citywide challenge. It's a nationwide challenge. It's an international challenge. But for us, taking responsibility for what we can do in this city, which requires all of us as individuals and organizations to come forward, look in the mirror, and do the hard work it takes to help advance racial equity and social justice.
I know we get a lot of attention to the racial divide when we have that incident at Fenway Park recently, right. and Michael Che says this is the most racist city he's ever visited. But what about what people live with every day here? What are they really concerned about talking about now?
I mean, I think part of it is helping folks have the language to talk about these issues. So one thing we've learned through our engagement is that people are really hungry to have these conversations, and I think having a shared framework to be able to be in the same conversation has been really important to people, as well as having resources and tools to be able to support them in their personal and professional lives, and looking at what does this mean for the work that I need to do, what does this mean for my organization, and I think to the point around Boston being the most racist city in the country. the reality is our entire country has a culture of racism, and it's so embedded in our culture that many times we don't see it. And so this is really about uncovering the veil so that we can all see the challenges and how it impacts all of us, not just people of color, but white people too. And so that we can come together and see this as a shared challenge. In that for Boston, our work really is about taking ownership for the things that we can and doing the hard work. And our hope is that our residents and our organizations will join us in that, which they have, by all indications so far, are really energized around doing this work. And I think we are in a unique position in Boston because of the image that has been portrayed around the city to really show that who we really are. And I think many folks are unaware, some folks who live in Boston are unaware that we are more than 50% people of color. And when I travel around the country, it's amazing how many folks aren't aware of that fact. And I think even just that fact alone changes a lot of the perceptions. But then looking at all the work that the mayor has been leading, not just with the resilience strategy, but with our the work that we've been doing in partnership with the Economic Development Cabinet under Chief Barros, the work that's been happening with Commissioner Shea, who you just had on your show, the work that's been happening all across the city long before Atyia showed up to do this, but really kind of connecting the dots across this. It's part of a more strategic approach in terms of how we look at policies, practices, and having these conversations within community as well as internally.
We have a little time, but we should let our viewers know a little bit of the details about the series and when
That's
it's going to be happening.
So we're hoping to launch a series of dialogues all across the city, and we're going to be training facilitators, so folks who have some level of experience already in having these difficult conversations and leading these difficult conversations, to have a shared framework for how we do this all around the city. We're very excited that we've been able to partner with Hyams Foundation in order to actually implement this work. The recruitment for the work is starting now, so folks can go to boston.gov/resilience to learn more about the process and can sign up for notifications. For folks who are interested in volunteering to facilitate, we can be reached at bostonresilience@boston.gov.